Hello guys, welcome to today's video. On this video, I'll be talking about something that I've been asked quite a number of times, and that's risk assessment. So basically, risk assessment is a systematic process of identifying hazards and evaluating any associated risks within the workplace, then implementing reasonable control measures to remove or reduce these hazards. And many people think that hazards or risk assessment is only for construction sites or oil and gas fields. It's everywhere because there are risks everywhere. In your homes, in the road, in the kitchen, everywhere there are risks. So if you don't assess this risk, how can you control this risk? And risk assessment is very important because it helps in preventing accidents in the workplace. It also helps in reducing injuries and saving lives, obviously. It also helps to generate awareness about hazards in the workplace, and also helps the management to make decisions about risks, including identifying who is most at risk and making adjustments towards mitigating these risks. So what are the steps in risk assessment? The first step in a risk assessment is identifying the hazards. You must first identify these hazards because it's a very crucial step. You must identify these hazards to know what could cause harm. It could be slippery floors, loose wires, open manholes, chemical or oil leaks, loud machines. So if you can see these hazards, then you can assess these hazards. And if you ignore them, it may hit you when you don't expect. Then the next step after identifying the hazard is identifying who might be harmed. Now that we know what the hazards are, the next step is very, very important. For example, in the construction site, you must identify who are the particular persons that might be harmed. And it's not just limited to the laborers or the workers or the helpers. You could also have visitors, supervisors, members of the management team, auditors. These are all people that can be harmed in the workplace. So you must identify who might be harmed after identifying the hazard. The next step after identifying who might be harmed is to assess the risk. Now that you know the hazard, you know who might be harmed, you measure and assess the risk. How likely is it to happen? How bad would it be if it does happen? Some risks could be mild, some risks could be also fatal. So your job is to know the difference. The purpose of a risk assessment is to know the likelihood and the severity of these risks. The next step is determining control measures, which means taking action. And in determining control measures, you have to follow what we call the hierarchy of controls. The hierarchy of controls, first you have elimination, which has to do with removing the hazard completely, which means there is no hazard at all, there's no risk. The next step in the hierarchy of controls is substitution. That means replacing it with something safer. For example, if it's a chemical that's very, very hazardous, you replace it with another chemical that's less hazardous. The next in the hierarchy of controls is the engineering controls, which has to do with making physical changes like maybe introducing barriers or ventilation, or as the case may be. Then the next in the hierarchy of controls is administrative controls, which has to do with changing how people work, the rules, the procedures, trainings, and this has to do with the administration, the management. And the last one, which is seen as the last line of defense, is the personal protective equipment, your PPE, giving workers protection, gloves, goggles, mask, and all that. And like I said, it's the last line of defense, not the first. Because at the end of the day, not every risk can be erased, but it can be managed. Then the last step in the risk assessment is to record and review, or rather documenting it. So you have to write it down, you document it, what are the hazards, who is at risk, the controls. You keep a record and you have to review it regularly. It could be monthly, it could be every 6 months, it could be annually, as the case may be, or according to how your company does it. So you have to review it regularly, because the job changes, the job will change, the site will change, you might have new workers, you might have new machinery and all that. So the more you go on, you discover that new risks show up all the time. Thank you for watching today's video. I hope you've learned something new. If you have any questions, you can drop them in the comment section, and if you have any other input you like, you could drop them in the comment section. If you have not liked this video, please do well to like now and follow Chris Safety for more safety related content. See you in the next video.